Coming up on the world's most expensive rides, a once-forgotten race car kicks off a collector's frenzy. An all-American road rocket packs performance and history. And a super cool supercar might just help save the planet. Ask any Ferrari owner and they'll tell you there are two kinds of people in this world. Those who drive Ferraris and those who don't.
For a Ferrari guy, it's the sound, the smell. It's a visceral thing. This is what it's all about.
But this exquisite classic is not just any Ferrari. This is a Ferrari 250 GTO. Series 1. Only 36 were ever made, and it's one of the priciest collector's cars in the world. Despite its enormous cost, the Ferrari 250 GTO measures a modest 14 feet, no longer than a Toyota Prius. It's a trim, minimalist package weighing just 2 tons with a V12, putting out an impressive 300 horsepower. For improved handling, the entire engine is located inside the front axle. But it's not just the innovative engineering that makes this a supercar. It's the deep emotions the 250 conjures up in anyone lucky enough to own one.
The car, to me, is the ultimate expression of a great front-engine sports car. And it is easy to drive. In terms of just the physical beauty of the car, I really know of nothing else in that era that matches it. You really want to be thrilled by noise. It is just sensational. It is just ripping canvas.
Car collector Chip Connor of Northern California owns one of the rarest of all 250 GTOs. A mint-condition veteran of the track and a true winner.
I'm just very fortunate to have it. It was only in 4 races in 1963, which is the bulk of its racing career. Never crashed, but in every one of those races, it either won outright or it won its class.
All 250 GTOs started life as purely race cars. The car was created under Gran Turismo rules that required all competitors to be street legal. That's where the O comes from in GTO, Gran Turismo Omologato, which means sanctioned in Italian. But the 250 GTO breaks all the rules when it comes to race car handling.
Most of those cars were hard work. And you climb into this car, and because of its wonderful history and success, you just assume it's going to be daunting, and it's not. It's one of the easiest cars to drive ever made, and that's why it was so successful in the races.
But few drivers have the chance to experience the thrill firsthand. Ferrari made just a handful of these exquisite machines available to the public. Buyers were picked by Enzo Ferrari himself. The sticker price back then, just $18,000. But within a decade, the 250 GTO had been overtaken on the track by a new breed of cars, and more or less forgotten by Ferrari enthusiasts.
In the 70s, this was an old race car. The newer versions of the mid-engine cars, of course, garnered all the enthusiasm amongst collectors. But then a light bulb seemed to have gone off, and people recognized that this was really the end of a very, very grand era. And as people became more and more aware of these wonderful attributes, the car's value started to go up.
Only a true original could inspire a movie, as the GTO did for Los Angeles film director and former owner Stephen Mitchell. in 1968, the Ferrari fanatic spotted a prized GTO on the streets of Los Angeles, which ultimately turned into the find of a lifetime.
A year later, I was driving a Ferrari Berlinetta Lusso. I took it into my mechanic for a tune-up one day, and there on the other side of the garage was this very same GTO that I'd seen a year or so earlier.
The car's engine had blown, and the owner was selling. Mitchell immediately made an offer to the mechanic.
I paid $7,000 for it. I owned the car for a number of years and drove it every day on the street. That was my daily transportation.
Despite the good times, in the early 70s, Mitchell decided to sell the car for a business investment. The GTO collector's craze still hadn't taken off. He pocketed just $10,000.
I sold it merely to finance a buying trip to Italy. I was going over to buy some Ferraris and Maseratis to bring back and sell at this end. And so it was just a way to capitalize the trip. And it never occurred to me that I wouldn't be able to get it back.
During the boom years of the 1980s, the demand for GTOs grew, driving up the price to stratospheric levels. After changing hands several times, Mitchell's car was bought by billionaire designer Ralph Lauren for a reported $600,000. It's now the pride and joy of the Ralph Lauren collection. The fashion icon owns dozens of priceless classic cars. A museum makes a fitting home for Stephen Mitchell's masterpiece of a GTO, alongside Bugattis, Alphas, and other legends. But for the GTO's former owner, letting go is still bittersweet.
I would like nothing more than to have it back, let's put it that way.
The next best thing to owning the car was a lifetime event that united 24 of the original GTOs on the same racetrack in Northern California.
Seeing 20-plus GTOs in one place at one time, engines running, racing, was the most fun I'd had in 30 years.
With only 36 cars ever made, there can only be 36 modern owners, and most of us have owned our cars for a long time. It is a fraternity of enthusiasts.
There was a camaraderie there that just can't, as a writer, I can't put it into words. It was a monumental event.
After 40 years, the GTO 250 still has that special magic that's impossible to put into words or numbers.
The GTO has become a very, very valuable car. In many ways, it's iconic. It's a signature car. It's the crown jewel of collections.
Well, I know people have their favorites, but I think that if one spends 5 minutes in the presence of a GTO, they'll come away with the same conclusion that I have, that it is the only car.
And one of very few automobiles in the world worth tens of millions of dollars. It's a thoroughly modern supercar with history under the hood and performance that's strictly 21st century. Meet an all-American road rocket, the Saleen S7. The Saleen S7 is a sleek slither of carbon fiber, measuring 15.5 feet from fender to tailpipe and just over 3 feet tall. Behind the wheel, the driver is virtually horizontal.
The neat part about it is when you sit there, your legs are fully extended. There isn't, in a more normal car, you sit like this with a steering wheel, and that's exactly how they do the race cars. It's a unique feeling.
The long, lean Saleen gets its name from its creator, Steve Saleen, a former racing driver from California. He began making cars in 1983 with a line of customized Ford Mustangs. The S7 was his first original and first true supercar.
A car like the Saleen S7 is a very rare product. Any car built from scratch is a bit of a challenge, but when you're trying to build one that's going to go upwards of 200 miles an hour and carry a lot of horsepower and a lot of performance capabilities, all of the engineering considerations, the weight, the aerodynamics, everything gets a lot more critical, a lot tougher to get right. So the S7 was a lot to bite off.
But despite the challenge, Saleen succeeded in his quest, launching the S7 in 2000. Like the best track cars, it's ultralight and powerful, with an enormous 7-liter V8 placed right where it counts, over the wheels.
In the world of supercars, weight is not your friend. You can have as much horsepower as you want, but if you have too much weight, it's not going to go anywhere. Well, this particular Saleen is the lightest. It's 2,750 pounds, so it's just like it's a rocket.
The Saleen S7, essentially a mid-engine vehicle that the proportion is right smack in the center, very lightweight. The Saleen S7 is definitely, a race car.
The power comes from a 427 cubic inch aluminum engine, updated from a classic 50-year-old Ford design.
The Saleen S7 uses kind of an interesting engine. Back in the 60s, 427 Fords were powering NASCAR racers and, 427 Cobras, that's where that number came from. It's Ford-based, but Saleen has really built a small block, all-aluminum version in a much smaller, lighter, more compact package.
It's actually a small block, but it's got the big block power, and it's amazing.
The combination of a featherweight car and a ferocious engine gives the Saleen the potential for record-breaking speed.
The Saleen S7's top speed has been rated at 205 miles an hour. There's been people that have actually hit 220 on that particular car. It's 0 to 60 is 3.5 seconds. It does the quarter mile in 11.5 seconds. This is for a street car. It was the world's fastest street car in 2000.
But such peak performance creates very real challenges when it comes to managing the flow of air over and through the machine. On the Saleen, every curve and scoop has purpose: to keep the car rooted to the road and the engine cool.
One of the most interesting things I find about this vehicle is it doesn't just take big gulps of air. It almost takes little bits of air here and there, and the spoilers are double lifted, and all kinds of different things are done with it. So it's creating this flux of air kind of going all over the place.
But the S7 doesn't just excel in aerodynamics. The car's light and slim, but spacious enough for the kind of amenities you'd expect when you're paying a fortune for a set of wheels.
What's nice about that car, if you notice, it's a very long car. And even though the Saleen S7 is a street race car, it's got all the creature comforts you need. Power windows, air conditioning, heat, got their DVD player, flip-up, nav screen on there with a backup camera. It's got everything you need to be comfortable in there for the 200-mile-an-hour ride.
Part of the conception was to make this a car that was reasonably livable on the street, a car that you could use for regular transportation as well. So it was a compromise they accepted, to have the extra weight of some of those amenities inside.
And for true lovers of speed and luxury, the Saleen is worth the extra digits in the sticker price, and sometimes even more.
The Saleen S7 was introduced in 2000, had a sticker price of $695. The first couple that were sold for over $1 million at auctions.
The Saleen S7, a rare ride at an even rarer price, and an all-American exclusive. Imagine a car as fast as a Porsche Carrera and almost as green as a Toyota Prius. And not just any car, but a supercar with a bodacious body and sleek lines that make it one of the most exotic-looking automobiles you'll ever see. Meet the clean, green ride with the sting in its tail and the technology of tomorrow under its hood. The Scorpion Hydrogen Supercar. This forward-thinking $250,000 beauty theoretically maxes out at around 208 miles per hour, 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. It's 1.2 tons heavy, 14 feet long, and 7.5 feet wide at the hood, expanding to just short of 8 feet at the rear.
It's very curvy. It has that hourglass figure of a woman's body. It's very pinched at the waist, and it's bigger in the hips.
Design-wise, the design trend that we're in now as a whole is a little sharper, faceted edge, and they're not there. They're almost either a few years back or they're looking so far forward we haven't quite gotten there yet. The car's really interesting. It's really cool.
Those come-hither contours roll seamlessly into the interior of the car as well.
The dashboard is very, very curved. So is the seating arrangement. We have exposed crash bars. The chassis is somewhat exposed on the inside. We have exposed aluminum. It's very, very race car oriented.
This revolutionary ride is Ron Maxwell's passion. The 40-year auto industry veteran believes that the inspiration for his low-slung beast of a vehicle comes from a higher power.
When I was born, God said, I need somebody to do automotive stuff. You're that guy. We're Christian people. We're just like everybody else, and we like cars, and we like going fast, and we like doing that stuff.
Ron raised money from private investors and in 2007 set up shop an hour outside of Austin, Texas to develop an environmentally friendly car like no other on earth.
Most fuel-efficient cars are either square boxes or eggs, and so we wanted to dispel that myth that they have to look like that.
For a name, Ron took inspiration from the wildlife around his Texas home, where the venomous insects are common.
Scorpions have a stinger in the back, and so we felt like that would be appropriate for our car. And it's a little Texas. It just wouldn't be the same car if it was armadillo.
But more unique than the name or appearance is the Scorpion's radical power source. Its engine is enhanced by hydrogen, the invisible gas that puts the H in H2O, and the most abundant element in the universe. Hydrogen is a hot topic in car design. But unlike most experimental hydrogen vehicles in development, this car doesn't run on a fuel cell. Instead, this Scorpion tears up the track with a hydrogen internal combustion system. It is the only engine like it in the world.
There are a lot of schools of thought that say hydrogen really is the fuel of the future, and that most of the fuels we're using now are just a clunky way to get at hydrogen. To use hydrogen as a fuel in an internal combustion engine is to inject it in as if it were gasoline. It does offer some potential advantages, as Scorpion is trying to harness. It's more efficient, it's cleaner, it's not an easy fuel to obtain and certainly to distribute. The Scorpion has an interesting notion about solving that by actually creating it on the vehicle itself through electrolysis of water using energy from the car's electrical system. It's definitely one of the ways to go, and especially if it can be done in a high-performance, exotic-looking car like the Scorpion, we're all for it.
We chose this system over the fuel cell. The fuel cell system requires you to have a high-pressure tank in the car. Plus, you have to have a hydrogen filling station, and there's just not very many of those yet. So we wanted something that we felt was more practical and something that we could use today to make a change.
The hydrogen works with a modified Acura gasoline engine to radically raise efficiency and power and lower emissions. This baby doesn't need to make hydrogen stops like a fuel cell car because it makes its own, then mixes it with gasoline. And where does the hydrogen come from? It's as simple as pouring in a glass of plain old tap water and separating out the hydrogen from the oxygen through electrolysis.
What you see here is the black box, and that's what stores the water. And that's also where the electrolysis happens, which is fracturing the water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. You'll add water right in the top. We're just going to top it off because our system's already full. You'd add about a quart of water right here. Pull the funnel out. Screw the cap back in. And the computer box right here manages everything else, and you're done.
Using a machine called a dynamometer, Ron's team put the Scorpion through its paces. Testing power, acceleration, and everything that goes into and comes out of the engine.
Our gas analyzer system has a probe that goes in the exhaust system. There's a pump that pulls out the exhaust fumes. It reads all the 5 gases we need to monitor so we can see how much hydrogen actually changes real-time emissions in the car.
The green gains are potentially huge. Ron says the Scorpion has up to 90% less toxic emissions than regular cars, emitting almost no CO2. It bumps up the efficiency of the gas-hungry Acura engine by 1/3.
Well, this car, we're getting around 40 plus. Everything that we have on our automobile, we designed and built to improve fuel mileage and protect the environment while still driving a cool car because we like cool cars.
Miraculously, this rule-breaking car took just over 6 months to research and design, and half that to build. Ron went straight from paper to construction with a chassis made of lightweight chrome moly steel and radical body design fashioned out of carbon fiber. But is this little vixen just pretty and good for the planet, or can she really perform?
Driven race cars professionally, and this car's fantastic. It's exceeded all my expectations. I've been through a U-turn of a little over 95 mile an hour on this. It has turns at well over 120, so it handles very well for a street car.
Ron Maxwell plans to build 200 of these cars a year, and a souped-up 650 horsepower version is in the works. So far, a total of 20 prospective owners have slapped down a deposit for their own Scorpions. The Scorpion Hydrogen Supercar, a Texan Spitfire with a green conscience, and one of the world's most expensive rides. From the mysteries of mind-blowing extravagance to the science of record-breaking speed. Wild cars, crazy boats, killer bikes, and massive tarmac-shattering trucks. The priciest, prettiest, and most insanely advanced vehicles on the planet. That's just the way we roll on the world's most expensive rides.